Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority Board meeting today. We're starting a little bit late in some measure due to the weather. My name is Lowry Snow. I'm one of the co-chairs. Seated to my right is Representative Tusher, who's the other co-chair. We have, of course, he and I here present. We have another 4 members of the board who are online and joining us there. So with those numbers of 6, we have a quorum and we will move forward. I should indicate that the members who are online are with us: Mayor Wilson, Mayor Ramsey, Mayor Walker, and April Cooper. So members online, we welcome you as well. Those in the audience here, we welcome. This is our March meeting for the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority Board. Our February board meeting was conducted virtually due to the legislative session that was ongoing. It's great for some of us to be here in person. We have a full agenda today and look forward to hearing a sub-campus proposal from our private sector development partners, the Point Partners, who are here today, and we welcome you. Before we can move forward, we do need to swear in the Land Authority Board. And if you don't mind, before we do that, do you mind, Representative Tusher, if I turn some time to you to talk about the legislation that reduced the number of the board and how that relates to what we're doing today with swearing in?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Chair Snow. So during the legislative session, one of the aspects we had a point bill, and one of the changes in that bill changed the makeup of the board. And as we looked at prior to that change, having a 12-member board made a lot of sense as we were envisioning and planning and preparing for what we were doing, and it made sense to have more voices. But as we transitioned to actually implementing those plans, as we talked about it as a legislature, we thought it made more sense to have a more nimble and smaller board. And so we made the following changes with the board makeup of rather than having 2 appointments from the House and the Senate, we've moved that down to 1 appointment from the House and the Senate. We continue to have the mayor of Draper and the Salt Lake County mayor. And then we have 3 appointments from the governor with expertise in land development, economic development, et cetera. And the governor has appointed April Cooper, Mayor Don Ramsey, and our good co-chair Lowry Snow to be the co-chair. And then from the Senate side, the Speaker of the House appointed me, and the Senate President appointed Senator Stevenson. And so that is the new makeup of the board.
I'll indicate that, thank you, Representative Tusher, that this legislation passed with the necessary 2/3 majority of each houses, which means that it became effective when the governor signed the legislation, which he did literally within just the last week or a few days. So it's ready and ripe that we move forward with the newly appointed board. And with that, we're going to turn time to our assistant Cece for the swearing in of all the members. And those of the members who are joining us online, if you would go through this process with us, even though you're online, we'd appreciate it. So Cece, we'll turn on a microphone and turn the time to you.
If you would, if you're here in person, you could stand and raise your right arm to the square and repeat after me. And if you're virtual, we want you to repeat also.
Cece, do you want us to be microphone on so you can all hear this, or just do this quietly ourselves?
What do you guys think?
That's Mayor Ramsey online. And Mayor Ramsey, I think it'd be appropriate for you to have your mics on so that you can affirm after as you take the oath.
I think so. Thank you.
And the camera too.
And also the camera, both.
Yes.
So if if you
I
would.
am driving to get downtown, so I'll
Okay,
do the best I can.
well, listen, keep both hands on the wheel and raise your right thumb. I think that's gonna do it, so.
Thank you.
All right. I do solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I
I
will
will support,
Obey,
obey, and defend
of the United States
the
the
Constitution
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah.
and the
and the Constitution of the State of Utah.
I will discharge the duties
and I
I
will
will
discharge
discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of
of
my
my
office.
office with fidelity.
Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank
I'll be
you.
sending those of you virtually, I'll send your documents by Adobe Sign this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Cece. And thank you, members of the board, for helping go through that exercise. That makes us all official so we can conduct business. So moving on with the agenda, an important part of our agenda each time is to allow time for public comment. This is a public project. We recognize that. And as such, we have a responsibility to ensure that the project reflects the values of the people of the state of Utah, and also for providing broad public benefit. We value input from the residents, and in fact, over 17,000 Utah residents previously have shared their priorities and ideas for this project. That their feedback has helped guide our planning. So subject to the rules that we have in place, if there are members of the public, first, anyone here in the hearing room that desires to make any statement. Not seeing any hands or anyone coming forward. Anyone virtually attending the meeting, members of the public that would like to make a comment? There is one, I'm informed. And if that person, what's her name? I apologize. Angie Perkins, if you can hear me, if you would proceed, make sure that your mic is unmuted. If you wouldn't mind, state your name, and if you represent a group, let us know who that is, and then you may proceed.
Hi, yes, my name is Angie Parkin, and I don't represent anyone, just myself. I was curious if the latest Utah legislature session made any other specific asks or changes. It sounds like the first was changing the number of the board from 12 to, and I didn't count how many. Now, how many is there?
7.
7. Okay. Were there any other changes?
This is Angie. That's a really fine question, and it's a good one. This is typically for you making comments, but what I'm going to do, if it's okay, is refer you to Representative Tusher, perhaps later today. If you would reach out to him, he can help answer those questions for you.
Okay.
I don't mean to be dismissive, but we typically just would like you to register any comments. Your questions are good, and I think Representative Tusher is the best member of this body, and also as a member of the legislature, to help answer your questions. And so what I'm going to ask our staff to do is maybe reach out with you privately and get a phone number, and we'll follow up with you.
Okay.
Thanks, Angie. Any other public comments? Anyone? Apparently not. So let's move on with the agenda. The next item is to consider approving the minutes of our meeting held February 19th, 2025. That was the meeting held virtually. I would entertain a motion, Chair would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
So moved by Representative Tusher. Do I have a second of that motion?
This is April Cooper. I'll second.
Thank you, April. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the meeting held February 19th, 2025. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. The minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is a financial update. we're going to invite Don Willie, who is the Director of Operations, up to the dais there. And let me just say before we turn the time to him, I think as a board, we recognize the trust placed by the public in our staff to ensure that land authority funds are appropriated and spent in a manner consistent with the budget. We do appreciate the work of our Finance Committee, which includes April, Cooper, Mike, Ombre, reviewing our financial statements to ensure they are in accordance with the board-approved budget. And we also appreciate Director of Operations Willie Don for his help overseeing the budget and our expenditures as well. So with that, let's start with you, Don, to share what you have with respect to the February 2025 financials.
Thank you, Chair Snow. I appreciate the opportunity to review this with you and appreciate the work of the committee in overseeing our financials and ensuring that we are good stewards of the public dollars that we utilize on this project. In addition to just the budget overview, we do have some proposed adjustments that we do need to make to the budget. And so I'll review those at the same time and would need the board to vote on that. As we get through the year, of course, there are some unforeseen expenses that pop up as you know, we experience in our personal lives, our home budgets. And so this is really just right sizing the budget as we go through the year. We anticipate that these adjustments will carry us through the end of the fiscal year, which would be the end of June. So we across the board, we're still looking very healthy. At this point, we should have 33% of our budget remaining in the fiscal year. We're currently on the overall budget at 70%. So still doing really well, ensuring that we are utilizing those dollars appropriately. We'll have a few larger items that will come into the budget. And so we'll get closer to that 33% as we end near the fiscal year end. A few adjustments that we would propose making. First, just moving, and these are all line item adjustments, so not increasing the budget overall, just moving some money around to ensure that we are within each budget line. So we have not spent as much in the out-of-state travel as we anticipated, but we have spent a little. We're nearing the top of the budget for our in-state travel. So just to give us some buffer, I just propose moving $5,000 from out-of-state to in-state. Additionally, a bigger item that we incurred is utilities, ironically. So DFCM has kindly been paying our water bill previously, and this is to retain water rights on the site. We did get a bill for $200,000, $230,000 from Jordan Valley Water District for those water rights, and it's appropriate at this time to move that cost to the Point of the Mountain. So we've always held in the current expense appropriation $200,000 for something like this, an unforeseen larger expense that we might incur. And so we propose moving the entirety of that line, the $200,000, into 6193 utilities water, and then also moving $35,000 from professional technical services. We still have quite a bit of budget left in that line, so moving $35,000 to utilities as well to cover that specific invoice. So this is an annual invoice that we'll incur, and we'll ensure that that's budgeted properly moving forward in the new fiscal year. Some other smaller adjustments, just with some board changes. We want to make sure that we can recognize board members properly. And so we just would like to move $200 from 6181 to 6272 at the exhibits, displays, and awards. We anticipate being able to provide a plaque to our outgoing board members and recognize them for their service. And so that just covers the gap in the funds that are needed for that. Finally, we do have a higher burn rate in our data processing. This is just the DTS bill that we received from the state of Utah for staff equipment and technology services. With our transition in executive director, we needed some additional support in technology. So we're burning a little bit higher on that budget line. We've had some conversations with them as we've reviewed the billing and realized that there was some overages. We will recognize some change, we'll recoup some of the costs some of the overages that were charged to us by mistake. And so we'll actually see a credit coming back to our account, but still needed to move a little bit over to accommodate the technology charges from the state. So just moving 2,000 from 6,583 over to 6,500. So again, the overall budget is very healthy. And just with those minor changes with the line items, that keeps us on track to remain on budget through the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you, excuse me, Don, for that report. Well done. Let's go to the board and see if any of the board members have questions for Don about where we are and any of those proposed changes to the budget that Don is recommending. Any question? April?
Mr. Chair,
Mayor Walker, it sounds like
So-
you.
on the water issue, was that the purchase of the permanent water right?
No, it's to retain the water rights. So again, DFCM has been incurring that charge kindly for us in the past, and it's just moving that invoice to our side. So
Is that ongoing then?
It is.
Okay, at that rate is that like a year or two of water?
I'll defer to Director Ombre to answer that.
Let's get you a mic, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Walker. So that is 1 year worth of billings. So DFCM covered it under the demolition budget of the existing prison for the past 2 years, and that project has been closed. And so we incurred that cost this year.
And it's 200,000 a year at the level we're using it now?
It's $230,000 a year, and that's to retain the rights. Obviously, we're not using hardly any water,
okay.
right? Yeah, that's just to make sure that we have the appropriate amount of water when we do go vertical and need the water.
And forgive me if I don't understand, so we always have to pay for the retention of the rights, and then we'll pay for the water that ultimately gets used?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mayor Walker. Any other questions? I think April, you may have had a question.
Just a comment, since I sit on the finance committee, and I was going to say I've reviewed these financials, appreciate Dawn preparing them, and agree that now that DFCM demolition project is over, that we need to be putting that expense underneath our budget. So yeah, I had understood that 200,000 was just for us to maintain our yearly, just our annual fees, because there's so many water rights. So other than that, moving the state out of state travel to in-state and a couple other items, it's all been reviewed and I put my stamp of approval on it. So I just wanted to input that. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Good comments. Any other questions or comments? And I might indicate that April, you've been serving on the Finance Committee for some time, and we hope that you will continue in that capacity. And then I would also say to the board, we typically have 3 members of that Finance Committee. So we have an opening for another board member that if they would like to serve. And if you'd let either Mike, our director, or myself or Representative Tusher know, we'll take that into consideration. But I'd like to, I think Representative Tusher and I both would like to see that back at 3 members. So just let us know. Any other comments? or
This is Donna
questions?
Ramsey. If I may, I just appreciate that it's a small allocation, but making sure that we do something for the outgoing board members. I think a plaque or some simple thing is appropriate. There's a lot of folks that put a lot of time into serving on this board, and I just appreciate the thoughtfulness of making sure that we do something to recognize those folks who aren't going to be serving on the board anymore, but have put a lot of time into this project.
That, Mayor Ramsey, is an excellent suggestion, and we should recognize them. And I think you all know that we have recognized board members as they finished their service in the past, And thanks for that, Don. We'll make sure that with the director, we'll follow up on that. Okay, I'm assuming, Don, that you'd like to see a motion approving your report, but also specifically these changes to the budgets. Am I correct about that?
That's correct.
The chair would entertain that motion if one of the board members would care to make it.
Mr. Chair, Mayor Walker, I move that we approve the budget with the amendments as stated.
Motion by Mayor Walker is in order. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Mayor Wilson. I'll second it.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Motion is that we approve the report, including the changes to the budgets as identified by Don. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, and the report and the changes are approved. Thanks again, Don.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is listed on the agenda as the subcampus proposal application. As I mentioned before, our point partners are here today to present a subcampus proposal and related actions. So I think we all know that recently the Land Authority adopted and recently amended a subcampus proposal process. And when I say recently, it's probably been within the last year. So supposedly, so probably not that recent. We, in our policy, we adopted a process by which we could consider subcampus proposals. That allows, in this case, the development of the point outside of phase one, either by our developer or by a third party to make a proposal for a campus, a subcampus. And that's exactly what is happening today with this proposal that we've known about, and a lot of work has been done on it. But today, we're here to receive the subcampus, the official subcampus proposal from the Point Partners. Authority board members have received the application electronically for review, and with that, we'll invite the Point Partners to come forward and have a seat, and we'd like to hear your proposal, and we may have a few questions or comments. So Patrick, maybe a good place to start is for you to introduce, for the record, everyone that's here and that will participate on behalf of the Point Partners.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Snow. So Patrick Gilligan with Lincoln Property Company represented the Point Partners, and also with me, as we'll be sharing slides or trading slides through this presentation, is Jay Hardy with Colmena Group and Robert Booth with Wadsworth Development. Oh, and Zach Clegg, sorry, with Lincoln Property Company as well, who's back there.
Good to have all of you here. So
thank you. Good to be here.
We'll turn the time to you and allow you to go forward.
All right, 1 second. I'm just going to share screen. All right, so again, intent today is to present and discuss our subcampus proposal for planned event venue. So we're going to sort of walk you through the why, and then we'll go into the how. We put this quote on here just as a good reminder of sort of why, we're all here, I guess, TPP and obviously POMSLA. The intent was always to do something different in Utah and to think big and look at a amazing blank canvas to do something different that we don't yet have in this market, in this state, in our opinion. And so we tried to hold ourselves accountable to that mission. And by trying to think of projects that really will create activation and momentum for this one-of-a-kind and once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So we always use this quote. We think it was great from the governor to sort of look back and remind ourselves what the mission is here and what we're trying to do, and not to sort of think smallly, but think large in regards to what we can provide and achieve at the site. So quick background just on the overall application in terms of by the numbers here. So as you can see on the right, and we'll zoom out and obviously look at this as it correlates to the site plan, 100,000 square foot facility. This will be a 5,000 person or 5,000 seat, event venue that can accommodate, again, a myriad of different events and programs throughout the year. Based on our economic forecast, this is looking at a total of $1.34 billion in GDP growth. Projects 216,000 annual visitors to the project, creates 77 full-time equivalent jobs, and will generate $228 million in new state tax revenue over the next 40 years. The goals for today, won't go into them too much, but obviously provide a clear overview of the event venue subcampus and its role within the point. Discuss how we can ensure that all parties, POMSA, TPP, and the PID board have full alignment of interest in this pursuit, and address any remaining questions and considerations to facilitate informed decision-making. Now we're just going to go into the plan. So again, if you're obviously, this is phase one of the project. Let's see here on our map. Essentially our promenade here, which is obviously the focal point of the campus. And what we really are looking at doing here is providing this great kind of end cap and terminus to our promenade, which again has been obviously a very thoughtful and critically engaged piece of the project. So this provides a sort of destination for a promenade. It provides a great cap. It really also will serve to activate not just our promenade and the retail and all the different amenities that will be curated around this initial phase, but really serve as, again, sort of a heartbeat for the entire 600-acre project, over the long term. Zooming in a bit, just again, if looking at the mixes of uses here from retail, hospitality, office, multifamily, et cetera. Again, it shows us a great way that these different activated areas are scattered throughout this first phase. And this event venue, again, helping to program and drive momentum into all these other projects. As we've always mentioned, this is an anchor opportunity that we think is extremely special. We don't have the benefit from having surrounding development on this site. As we all know, right, it's a pretty large blank canvas. And making sure that all these pieces to the puzzle can perform and activate themselves as quickly as possible during the initial phase of development is obviously a key objective of ours. And we have one shot to really get it right. And we just believe this is a great destination driver that will help, again, curate all the other sort of amenities within the district that will help, again, lure additional occupants and tenants, et cetera, over the course of our development. And just a reminder again, obviously in phase one, we're looking at 2.3 million square feet of commercial office use, 450,000 square feet of retail and entertainment, 380,000 square feet of hospitality, and 3,300 plus multifamily units in this initial phase. Wanted to sort of highlight just the walkability and permeability of this site and how it correlates to the event venue. We think that's, and anytime we're doing these planning exercises and trying to create, a very walkable and a very attractive and approachable mixed use district, the permeability is key. And again, this just shows the great ways that you can meander through this first initial phase and down the promenade. And again, really shows how that event venue on the end cap of our promenade serves as this great destination and sort of this terminus for our most visible street so far at this project, right? This will be our main street, if you will. And obviously the amount of planning time that has gone into developing and curating what we think is collectively a great end result from both POMSA and TPP in its evolution. This is kind of the cherry on top, in our opinion. Now you have this great place to go that just sort of, again, activates and allows us to have, again, a consistent level of activation overall for the entire site, given the various different events and different uses that can take place on site. That will help, again, really let the additional retailers and commercial uses within the project thrive. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay Hardy with Comina Group to walk through that in a little bit more granularity. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. It's good to be with you this morning. I'm going to go through a little bit of the what the project is and our venue partners. We felt very strongly about getting partners on early in order to execute our vision. Let me go to the next slide there. So first of all, the opportunity, we looked at a series of different things. And in the original plan that you saw in 2022, the item that was labeled an event venue was smaller. In doing market research, we really realized that the opportunity was in that 4,000 to 12,000 seat capacity. So that's what we've targeted. That's the purpose of today's sub-campus application, is that it didn't really fit in where we had it originally. So we're going to target about a 5,000 seat venue. I'm going to go through 3 examples. The first 2 of those are publicly owned. One of them, many of us got to visit. The first one is the OC Vibe in Orange County. This is a publicly financed venue, 5,500 seats, and I'll go through the size of what we're proposing. A little bit smaller, maybe 8 to 10% smaller, but very similar to that. Let me get that next slide there. The Pinnacle in Nashville just opened in February. This is predominantly a music venue. It's a little bit smaller, but it is Nashville, and so I don't think they have a whole lot of trouble filling it. One of the interesting parts is our parking solution group actually just opened this, Robert, was it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? So Metropolis, who we're not speaking about that today, but they worked through the opening and just was a flawless opportunity. So this is a similar size in Nashville, but concert focused. The next venue is the Tahoe Blue Center. And we went and visited this. This is also publicly financed. This is a very similar size, a little bit smaller. It is anchored by AHL hockey team. So when we went to see it, there was a hockey focus when we were there. But clearly, as we'll outline here in a minute, the uses in the building, the opportunity in the building was very similar. This project was bought out in late 2021, and total project cost was right at $100 million. So when we talk about what our budget is, we think it's a very similar comp. Obviously, Tahoe is a little more expensive to build in, but we think it's a good venue. Programming and flexibility. So this just really pops the top off of what the building might look like, but we expect, different ways to cut up the building, where we can do a very small event at 500, a good concert facility at 5,000. We expect live entertainment. You can see there the Cirque du Soleils of the world, the touring artists. Sports, we have not really focused on having an anchor tenant here. The focus has been more on community type events or traveling work. So MMA, boxing, tennis, a lot of community events are in our program right now. This is an initial venue concept. So essentially what you have here is the building is on the left side. So you can see up at the top, that's really the terminus of the promenade and how it really dumps out into really a nice little plaza. And then your lobby entrance, the general admission event floor. You've got 1,350 retractable seats, and then your stage, and then back of house is the gray on the bottom left, bottom right. The parking on the right-hand side, that would be surface parking initially, and then eventually that'll grow into a parking structure. And then you see right above where it says surface parking, a potential future retail. We think it's important to anchor and really to design to have a street front there on the connector road that's involving retail, and that will happen as part of the construction of the parking structure. The second view here, just wanted to show you how versatile the building is. So it can do many, many things, but this sort of flips the ground floor and the event floor into a basketball format. A lot of this stuff is the same, but you pull the stage out and then you put retractable seatings where the stage was. So one important thing that I've felt passionate about, if you look at the bottom left where it says talent, those 6 little gray boxes, I think we really need to have a really good kind of back of house locker room, green room setup if we want to go after high school state championships for volleyball, basketball. You kind of have 2 teams playing, 2 teams coming in, 2 teams leaving. And I've been in venues where there was not that, and you're really restricted on getting those tournament type venues. So let me talk briefly about our partners. The Oakview Group, and they are online with us if there's any questions for them. We quite often you go through and you design a building, and then you build the building, and then halfway through that you bring on your operator, and I've made that mistake before, and so we didn't want to do that this time. So we went through a pretty extensive process with a few different groups and ended up selecting the Oakview Group. And as you can see, they're managing 400 venues worldwide, 50,000 employees. They also are doing stuff in Utah to date. And so at the University of Utah and Utah Valley Convention Center. Most importantly, as part of our process, we ask venue operators, can you, will you, and how much will you be willing to bring to the table to help us support this? And this was really by far the largest investment in the venue. So we're excited to have them not only just as our operator, but putting money into the deal. The second one is Gensler. We selected them as the architect. You can see some of the projects that they've done. That'll sound very familiar because they do a lot of work in this region, but they're really world-class, best of class, and also a very sustainable designer. So we're thrilled to have them as our design partner. And we started that design process about 6 weeks ago, and some of the site plans or the internal programming plans that I shared were from their work. Gensler also within the project is the architect in conjunction with FFKR on Convergence Hall. So they have an intimate knowledge of everything going on, and to have, one building kind of at a bookend and one right along the promenade, we think they were an excellent selection for us to bring to the table. So I'm going to turn it over to Robert. He's going to talk about the PIDs and the Public Infrastructure District and how this is all going to get paid for.
Thanks, Jay. Let's talk about structure for just a moment, not to bore everyone, but I think it's important. TPP, the developer, submitted the subcampus application to POMSLA in February on behalf of the Point Public Infrastructure District number 1. So the PID, PID number 1 will be the entity that contracts with POMSLA in the development agreement, the subcampus development agreement. The PID will be the entity that signs, that is the ground lessee on the land, and then the PID would also be the owner of the event venue. And so the PID was created in the summer of last year and has been operating as a public entity effectively since that point. The PID is contracted with Pinnacle Consulting Group as the PID administrator, who have been keeping track of public meeting minutes, regulatory compliance, and doing the budgets and so forth. And the PID is also contracted with legal representation White Bear and Kelly, Tanaka, and Waldron, who specialize in district representation. And so they're very familiar with PIDs and what has to happen. And so we've engaged, the PID has engaged them as counsel as well. Regarding TPP's long-term involvement in the event venue, there will be none long-term. TPP's involvement in the event venue is really through a third-party contractual relationship, signing of a development agreement. TPP would contract for the design and construction of the event venue and the surrounding roads. And once that is complete, TPP would effectively have no involvement with the event venue thereafter, once its contract is complete. Regarding bond financing, if we're successful in getting the necessary approvals of this sub-campus application, along with associated legal documents in the future, the PID would look to go and issue bonds. And the bonds would be, we have been working extensively with Piper Sandler to structure a set of bonds that would be appealing to the market and that would have sufficient proceeds to do all of the items that we need to have them do. The bonds would be secured by 5 revenue sources. It would be by the real estate privilege tax, a portion of Palmsla's portion of the sales tax, a public improvement fee or PIF, event venue revenue itself, the net revenues from the event venue generation, and then parking revenues. So those 5 sources would be collateralizing the bonds, and those bonds would then be issued by the PID, and the PID obviously being a separate entity from Palmsla or the state helps to shield the state or Palmsla from any negative effects that may occur with the bonds. In terms of what we will be constructing, wanted to show you this visual, which is, that's our promenade heading east to west, and it's also the associated finger roads. So the improvements that the bond will be covering are what is represented on the screen here. This is the first kind of phase 1 roads and finger roads that would be covered. Here you see a visual representation of what that promenade could be like. We're actually in the process getting ready for ICSC and updating these to be actually very specific to the actual design that is in, because these were conceptual. So we're working on some specific renderings now that we'll share with you when they're ready. But that's a visual representation of the promenade. In addition to the promenade, the bonds would fund the construction of the event venue itself, as well as the surrounding roads around the event venue. And finally, we'd be targeting a construction of a parking deck as well. So when you look at those 5 revenue sources going into a bond issuance, when you look at the uses that those bonds would be supporting, those 3 main areas. It's the phase 1 infrastructure, the event venue, and then a parking deck. And I'll turn the time over to Zach to talk a little bit more about it.
All right, thanks, Robert. Yeah, so I wanted to maybe take kind of the high level 30,000 foot view on the process of the PID issuing the bonds, as well as what that implies or results in from a proceeds and a budgetary perspective. So like Robert mentioned, there are several revenue streams that will be pledged towards the PID. The public improvement fee, property tax revenues, a share of the sales tax revenue, which we're requesting, as well as the income generated from the parking revenue and the venue revenue itself. And so all of the income generated from the PID-owned assets will stay within the PID and go towards servicing the bonds. And so the way kind of in which that works is then, it's in concept quite a bit more complex and intensive, but in concept similar to if an individual or a business is going in to apply for a loan or a mortgage. An individual's going in for a mortgage, they'll bring their W-2s, they'll bring their tax returns, personal income statements, and then the bank or the credit union will say, okay, you're approved up to say $1 million, right, based on their analysis of that income. What we're going through, or what the PID will go through, is a process where it engages bond underwriters, which is Piper Sandler, as well as bond counsel, which is Gilmore Bell. They'll take all of these revenue sources. We've gone through the last several months having market studies performed, doing legwork on substantiating those revenues, putting together the kind of information that will be put in front of bond buyers or purchasers of muni bonds and public bonds. And so Piper will go take all that information, put that in front of the bond buyers. The bond buyers will then go and underwrite those various streams of income and will size. And so as a result of that process, we'll end up with certain bond proceeds that we can then go and build all of these public improvements. So, it's a little bit of an inexact science. However, there's these transactions that happen, weekly across the country. We have good comps and a good feel for what the market or how they'll receive this bond issuance. And so when Piper Sandler goes through and puts all of those revenues into their model and kind of puts together this package, as of right now, we're underwriting a bond that would net $197 million in proceeds that we can then use to finance and build all of these improvements. Now, again, that's subject to certain market factors and things that could change between now and when the bonds are issued. But we anticipate that should be around a budget of 180 to 200 million that we have to go and build all of these improvements. So we're further along on the design process with our roads, water, sewer, as well as our promenade. We anticipate that budget should be, kind of in that $45 to $50 million range to build out all of those improvements. We've been working with with our architects and designers for several months now and have a good feeling on that. And then ultimately what will happen is we'll take those bond proceeds after we go through and we have the budget for our roads, water, sewer, and promenade. The remaining funds we'll be able to utilize for our budget for building the venue as well as the parking facilities. And so based on comparable venues that have been built and information we have and talking with contractors and other groups, we anticipate that the cost of that venue should be anywhere from 100 to 120 million. But again, that'll primarily be driven by us setting a budget and then designing to that budget, right? These things we'll start from the beginning and make sure that, we size and design the building appropriately such for the proceeds that we have. And then, as Robert alluded to, we're going to have a lot of visitors coming to the venue, a lot of visitors coming to phase one of the point with retail, entertainment, with office, these other uses with the hotel. We need to adequately park this development or else it won't work, right? And so we need to allocate a significant portion of our funds from the PID issuance to building, either temporary surface parking, parking facility or parking deck, which we're certainly angling and prioritizing. So, we look at this and certainly extremely excited about it, but also recognize it's a large undertaking, right? It's not any small issue to go and finance and build all of these. And as part of that process, whenever you have public dollars and public financing involved, there's a high level of accountability and transparency required, and we certainly respect that and understand that. And so, as we started this process, intuitively, and the feedback we received from our conversations is that there's a market for this. It's a great idea. However, we also needed to do the due diligence or the PID needed to do its due diligence appropriately with the right third parties and other groups. And so, the PID ultimately contracted with a group, Hunden Partners, that is a real estate advisory and consulting firm based out of Chicago, who specializes in performing economic impact analysis and studies for entertainment venues, hotels, convention centers, tourism, other real estate advisory as well, but engage them to come and do an analysis on the economic impact and public benefit of this event venue and what that might look like. So we have on virtual today, Rob Hunden, who is president and CEO of Hunden Partners. And so, Rob, I'm going to turn the time over to you to speak a little bit about the work that you guys did, your firm, and kind of some of what your conclusions were on your economic impact study.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Hello, all. Rob Hunden here, zooming in from Chicago. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And actually on my left is Lexi Cuff, who's the project manager on the work. So she's here to answer any super detailed questions if any come up. But yeah, we were thrilled to have the opportunity to really look at first the market opportunity and viability of this project. And as was stated, it's pretty compelling. It fits a gap in the marketplace. And there was a lot of time and effort taken to ensure that the right physical program was conceptualized so that this thing would, this project would absolutely sing in the marketplace versus being something that duplicates what else is happening. So if we can go to the next slide, you can just sort of talk briefly As was mentioned, Hunt and Partners, based in Chicago, but working worldwide. We're the advisor of choice for all transformative real estate development projects, especially destination development, walkable mixed-use districts anchored by these hero projects, as we like to call them, and public-private partnerships all over. So that's kind of our DNA is in the public-private space. I started off at the City of Indianapolis local public improvement bond bank in the mayor's office. And so all of our folks and clients and projects are really in that realm that you all are working in today. So we're thrilled to have advised on this and really wish you all the best moving forward. And we've made projections about how we think that's going to perform. If we go to the next slide, I can talk a little bit about just at a high level, the fact that certainly this area is growing at a very rapid clip. It is growing, it's affluent, and so you have to be smart and manage that growth and make sure that what your great idea isn't duplicating things that are going on elsewhere in the market. And there's a lot going on, but there is definitely a gap there in the region that this venue fills. And as I mentioned, there was a lot of back and forth initially to make sure that, you know, should this be a traditional, arena with hockey, or should this be something that's a different thing altogether that's very flexible and able to do all kinds of event types. So we're very pleased with the results that they've come up with to move in the direction of the proposed project. And then in terms of what this can do, and we'll go to the numbers, which are boring but very important, because what the numbers represent is what this project can do for the point. Let's go back one slide to, yes. First off, it anchors the point's growth. So there are walkable mixed-use districts all over the place, and those need to be well conceptualized and executed. And your plan is excellent. But having those anchor elements that really draw people to the development and the location overall, the district, from outside the region, that brings in outside dollars to the local economy. And it can bring outside dollars from the state, from outside the state of Utah to the local economy and the state economy. And so those are all the things that we look at and filter for when we're looking at that uplift that an event venue would bring. So when we've looked around the country at both how these kinds of things perform, and that, again, that halo effect of people spending money and time pre-event and post-event, they're spending it there in the district, which is allowing you to capture that benefit versus having a standalone venue by itself or having a district without this venue. It's a 1 + 1 = 3. We have also studied areas where these kinds of venues have gone into a neighborhood or a development where they didn't exist before. We see that there's an uplift in the rental rates and the amounts that people are willing to spend to have an apartment near an event venue or an office or even retail and restaurant, because you're driving that demand throughout the year. And so there is that uplift, not only just from the people spending pre and post, but from people just wanting to be there more than they want to be somewhere else in terms of living, working, and playing. You're increasing that visitor duration and stay, and the longer people stay somewhere, the more money they spend. They're also more likely to spend the night in a hotel, which heads and beds, of course, then gives you even more spending from an overnight stay perspective. It also improves the quality of the experience for residents and visitors. So this isn't just building something for the visitor, it's building something for the place. The visitor helps pay for it when they come and they spend money in your district from outside the state or the locality. And so that spreads the cost around, obviously, but it maximizes the benefit in the area. And these are all things that the local residents are going to benefit from. And so it's a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of a setup. So we can move to the next slide to get into some more of those specifics about those approximate 120 events annually. So that's about one every 3 days, about 200,000 or more annual attendees to events at the facility. And over about a 30-year period, that net new spending of about 1.34 billion, which is 900 million in direct spending. So divvy that up over 30 years, on average, it's about 30 million in direct net new spending per year. In terms of the in-house financial performance, about a $6.6 million stabilized annual revenue, and net income of about 2.5 million, which, as mentioned, will be dedicated back to the project. And then in terms of new earnings, about a third of the new spending that is coming coming from this venue's development is going to go into people's pockets as income. So those jobs, those 77 full-time equivalents, are going to be getting about a third of that net new spending. And then in terms of community impact, of course, we talked about the extended visitor duration, the increased spending at the point, and of course, increasing neighborhood property values. So that's again, it's going to be easier to lease up space and at higher rates than if you didn't have this venue. So you're really creating something that is compelling and transformative. In terms of the fiscal benefits, we have net new state taxes of nearly $230 million, and that is mostly brought to you through increase in property taxes and sales taxes, as well as income taxes. So you have 65 million in new sales tax, 135 million in new property tax, and about 23 million in income tax. And then other taxes like food and beverage, grocery, and the TOT or TRT, which is the hotel tax, brings in a few million more. And so again, this is something where we're very pleased that you all have conceptualized this in a way that we think is going to make this all sing very well together, and be a real benefit not only to the local community, but to the state as a whole.
Thank you so much. Just curious, maybe if we pause there for a second, we're almost done with our presentation, but were there any questions for Mr. Hunden regarding the economic studies? As he's virtual, I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to ask him questions if there were any.
Any questions from the board? For Mr. Hunden, did you? Okay,
Mr. Chair, I had a question.
please,
Mayor
Governor,
Walker.
Mayor.
So when you've done this market analysis, and I guess the three venues that we talked about, Tahoe, the one in Nashville, and the one in California. I mean, Utah's certainly a much different market than all of those places. What concerns might you have for the difference in the market? I mean, I guess, what did you take into account to consider just the different venue here? I mean, in this place, we'll sort of be sitting, this phase one will be sitting out in a desert for a minute, along a promenade. So I just want to know, the numbers sound good and the economic opportunity sounds fantastic, but we are a much different market than Tahoe, Nashville, or Los Angeles. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about that. Thank you.
Certainly, happy to. Well, first off, there's no cookie cutter approach, and there are no cookie cutter markets. And so every time we do an analysis of any proposed project, we have to look at the reality of the situation on the ground, as well as the trends. It's a growing at a great clip market, but it's not as robust as some of the others that were talked about. But believe it or not, even though everybody thinks Nashville is much bigger and more robust than it is, and it is certainly from an entertainment perspective, its population is not too dissimilar from Salt Lake's metro population either. So there are similarities and differences. Certainly, Reno Tahoe, again, very different in many ways, but also has some similarities. So it's not like we're comparing you necessarily to like New York City or something like that. Now, Orange County is in the midst of a megalopolis, right? So they're Southern California. And so that is a pretty different setup. But what we look at really are what the venues are able to do, where they're pulling their markets from, and how they're performing as a result of that. And so when we compare and contrast those things, we're taking that all into consideration. And frankly, we are always trying to be conservative because we want you to overperform our projections as opposed to the opposite. So, Lexi, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to talk about in any of those comparisons.
Yeah, I think it's a good coverage, obviously, from Rob in terms of how we approach it, but we also not only are looking at kind of what's currently offered within the market, but to Rob's point, where those people are coming from. So being able to understand where also people within the greater Salt Lake City market are currently leaving to go attend events, where this would then generate that recaptured visitation. So if someone prior to would have gone to Denver, let's say, to see a show, now they have that availability here in the market. So that's now recapturing that visitor. So with that comes a lot of obviously analytics and data that we've touched on at a high level, but also speaking with the ones that are actually booking and routing the shows. So we talked to not only OVG, the one that would be managing this venue, but also, different promoters for different entertainment, family shows, understanding that market. And there is a lot of attractiveness when it comes to Salt Lake City in terms of where people can come from either prior to visiting this venue or then also post, so where they can go. So it's a very attractive routing route, I guess you could say. But those were kind of a lot of the justifications for our different projections there.
Thank you. Anything further, Mayor Walker? All right.
No.
Thank you. Mayor Ramsey, did you have your,
Yeah.
you have a question?
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, I really appreciate this economic impact study. I think this is really good data. It's good information, and I like the answers to the question that was just raised too. That was good. I just wanted to point out, in case anybody looks at this, when I looked at this and it said transient room tax, I thought, I'm pretty sure Draper is not in an area that currently is allowed to charge a transient room tax. I don't think that even exists yet in this area. And I leaned over to the good senator here and he confirmed that was the case. So there will have to be probably some legislative changes that take place in order to allow a transient room tax to be charged in this area. It's not yet a destination area that I think that's allowed. So I just wanted to point out, in case anybody ever looks at this and goes, wait, they can't charge that. Right now, I don't think they can, but if it's built into the numbers, I believe that that's something that will just have to be addressed. And I would imagine it probably can be if that's part of how this works out. It's not up to me. I'm not in the legislature, but just wanted to point that out, that when I noticed that, I thought, I don't know that that can happen there yet. So some changes will have to take place to allow for that. That's all.
Thank you, Mayor. Good point. Any other questions? I have one, but I'll wait to see if any of the other board members speak up or indicate question. My question really goes to, I'm sure it goes to your background and your experience in this area, but I'm curious about the celebrity industry. Are there some named say vocalists or bands or groups that would be recognized that are interested in these smaller event centers? Is that something you all look at? Are these kind of event centers being are they attractive to I don't want to say second tier, but those that might be interested in performing in a smaller event center?
Yeah, you would be, I think, pleasantly surprised to know how many big stars come through small to mid-sized venues. It's quite a lot. And even one that I worked on nearly 20 years ago out in very rural Oklahoma, it was a 3,500 seat venue. And we got Reba McEntire. So that's a perfect example. Even the three comps that were discussed here, they're getting the name brand acts that you would want to see in your marketplace. Of course, the one in Nashville, I think you have to take a little bit with a grain of salt because it's Nashville, but certainly the roster of folks coming through. That's why it's you'll be very impressed. We're not making any promises because we're not booking them, but it's very standard to have these bigger names come through. And of course, at this venue size, you also get the up and comers and the ones who were famous that are, you know, maybe a peg or two down from when they were at their peak, but they're still touring. So you get a lot of great mix and variety. But that's why it's great to have OVG as your operator and booker, because they're going to be the ones responsible for filling those dates. And so they're going to absolutely go for as best groups as they can. Lexi, anything else?
No, I would just kind of echo that. And there's a reason why this trend of kind of smaller to mid-sized venues is so attractive, is because there is such a large pool of acts or entertainment that can't necessarily fill out your arena size, but they want to still feel like they're obviously playing to a sold out crowd. So the intimate setting does allow for that. And then you're also able to achieve just different ticket prices than you would be if you're trying to sell out an arena that's maybe a little bit larger than what the act can pull on its own. So there is a lot of benefit to the sizing of this mid-size, especially for this market. I think when Rob mentioned Nashville, I think it was Casey Musgraves that opened up that venue there. So that is obviously a very big name, and she's also capable of selling out a Bridgestone arena, but the artists also do see a lot of benefit, I think, to playing these shows and being able to really feel like they're in an intimate setting.
Thank you. I asked because I have a granddaughter that would love to have Taylor Swift for an opening event there. So I'm going to turn the
It's a little
time
small for
to.
Taylor these days, but let's wait a few years and see where Taylor is then.
Okay. Representative Tasher has a question.
Yeah, I just had a follow up on that as well. And I've talked a little bit with the TPP about this in the past, but we had heard from, we have a venue in Orem, just, you know, maybe 20 minutes south of this venue, an 8,500 seat arena. And as we talked to them, they said they were having trouble booking some of these groups that had a minimum of 10,000 seats they wanted to see. And so their suggestion was, if you were going to build something like this, you should be at least 10,000. As we looked at the application coming in and the chart that you had of where the gap is in Utah, there was a gap at this sort of 5,000, 6,000 seat arena, but there was also a gap, it seemed like, between in that kind of 10 to 12,000 seat as well. So I think you've sort of spoke to that, but how would you help answer that question or the concern that what we're hearing from another state entity essentially that has this arena with 8,500 seats is saying, man, we wish we had another 1,500 seats because these acts that we're trying to bring in just say, sorry, we're not going to come unless you have a minimum of 10,000.
Right. There's always going to be a threshold for certain acts. It's how to then program with the space that you have. And I was just kind of refreshing the memory with that center that you're mentioning. I think their average attendance is about 6,000. So there is definitely a sweet spot in terms of what people are willing to book at. But I think that's also kind of speaks to why this sizing does work for this market, is that it is a very attractive sizing for the types of acts that would be coming through here. There's always going to be kind of that threshold where you might not meet a criteria of a certain event, but then you're also opening yourself up to the possibilities of having additional acts that maybe wouldn't have come to the market if there wasn't an event venue of this size prior to.
I
Follow-up.
believe OVG, the event venue operator, is online, and are they able to speak? They could answer some of this probably directly.
Kimberly, are they?
Yes, Stephen Petrovic here with Oakview Group.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Sorry, I was switching over to the panelists and didn't quite hear the question. Sorry, go again, please.
I think the question, Stephen, was, hey, we're proposing to building an approximate 5,000 seat arena. The question was, is there room, or did they consider something larger at maybe a 10,000 seat arena? And what would be the pros and cons of that? Is that a fair restatement of the question?
Yeah.
And why are we going 5,000?
Got it. Yeah. I think Lexi and Rob stated it and clarified it very well. Like this this 5,000 seat capacity is truly a sweet spot for really a large volume of touring entertainers around the country. And hey, sometimes if there is a request for additional capacity, sometimes we can book 2 shows. You can book a Friday and a Saturday to satisfy that need. So yeah, I think that 5,000 range, and again, the ability, as Jay was showing, the ability to kind of convert that box, convert that setup into something smaller for it to be truly mixed use, to have galas, to have banquets, to have events, to have sports. Whereas, hey, if you do tend to go a little bit larger, say, 7,800 to 10,000, that ability to convert down to small, it doesn't quite feel as homey. So this 5,000 range, it has the ability to, again, get small, but still, hey, that 5,000 seat capacity for your larger touring shows, it has the ability to satisfy a lot of those acts.
Thank you, Steve. Other questions from board members? Oh, yes, I apologize. Mayor Ramsey, you had your light on.
Thank you. So I just wanted to correct what I said because staff checked with the attorney and yes, and the legislature with the Senate and said, yes, that did get updated in legislation. So transient room tax is now authorized on this project, not throughout all of Draper City. It was right. This isn't an area that charges transient room tax, but it has been approved for the point. So just wanted to clarify that and not stress anybody out who's sitting there going, wait a minute, what? And at the same time, I'd be happy to make a motion that we book Reba McEntire for the first concert at this event and do my darndest to help make that happen. So anyway, just ponder on that and let me know if that's a motion I can make.
Let me check with my granddaughter. And so thank you for that, Mayor. So what you're also saying is South Jordan is still a heck of a good deal for a hotel room.
Yes, there's no transient room tax if you'd like to come visit. We're where everyone wants to live, not where they come to just recreate.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions for our presenters? Let's go back to you, Robert, then to
Okay.
continue.
Appreciate Hunden and OVG for participating virtually, and thanks. We just had really a couple slides left, which is, the actions that are necessary to make this happen. I wanted to really commend staff and council. We have been engaging in a meaningful way for months and months in this process to make this happen. And we submitted, as mentioned, the subcampus application a month or so ago, or February 26th, there it is. And so certainly are looking for an approval of the subcampus application. But the approval of the subcampus application doesn't get us the event venue. We need additional items to fall in place. There are, I don't know that these documents are before you now, or they will be in the future. But there's the subcampus development agreement that would accompany the application, which would be between the PID and Palms, as we discussed previously. There's the capital pledge agreement, which is pledging the revenues necessary to the PID so that it can do the bond offering. There's an amendment of the PID governing documents, a minor amendment there. And then there's an amendment to the development agreement signed with TPP. Most of those there's a couple necessary for this. A lot of those are cleanup items as well, just from everyday course of business that we've been operating, of some items that we've noted need to be changed. And we worked with staff on all of these. And so again, just want to commend staff for the time and energy and really digging in to understand these. And we, request your approval and really appreciate the time. I'll turn it back over to Patrick.
Yeah, and in closing, obviously appreciate everyone's thoughtfulness and participation here. But we really fully do believe this is the right project for right now and for everything that we've done so far with all the accumulation of hard work. And again, I think we really want to stress the flexibility of this project, which is why we're so excited about it. It's not just a venue for concerts, right? It's a venue for everyone. It's a venue for the project. It's an anchor. It's an activator. retailers want to be near this. People visit, they want to stay overnight. Like there's just so many good synergies that come out of having this sort of hub be part of our first phase, and especially the end cap to the Main Street promenade. But it's also, you know, looking outside the lens a bit of just entertainment. I mean, for commercial uses, office users, corporate tenants we're trying to attract to the project, having this become an offsite, you know, adjacency for all hands meetings, project launches, that's extremely valuable. I mean, we see this a lot in the commercial office world where, you know, a lot of buildings are building, you know, all hands or gathering spaces, and that takes a huge cost within the project, and that's passed on as rent back to the tenant if it's basically encased in the same building which they occupy. So having this offsite venue be an amenity and also just a driver for, hey, we have this great use here that we can take over. We can, you know, host events, parties, product launch, small conventions, et cetera. There's a ton of value there if we're looking again at sort of our corporate recruitment efforts. And so, you know, we're all very excited about the scale of it. Obviously Hunden and OVG, I think sort of Co-Chair Tusher, you know, hopefully answer, you know, why not bigger? I think, well, going bigger, one, you know, that's a lot more cost. I don't know if it's 2x, but it's definitely going to be incremental cost to this. But like everyone says, you know, this is this novel new venue that I think we're at the leading edge of, right, nationally. I think, again, there's not a lot of these in the country. Everybody wants them. Every other mixed use project we're seeing across the country is trying to have a venue like this included. And so I think all the work that's been done and us being ahead of the curve, we have the opportunity to be first movers in the state and really, you know, one in the West Coast or Western markets in general. So I think that's what's really exciting about the sort of this moment in time, and why the collective team, obviously in conjunction with Palmsville, has worked so hard on this to get to this point for submittal. And again, not to go too many quotes, I know we've done a bunch and I don't have to read this off, but, you know, we just, again, are trying to remind ourselves of this special moment in time, the accumulation of years of hard work and effort, and the tasks that, you know, we've had at hand of being responsible to live up to, I think, the values and goals of the Point, which is really developing something different, developing something special, and obviously developing something authentically Utah. And I think this definitely addresses our collective goals of really making this site stand out. We all know it's a wonderful location. I think that's another just great attribute of why we're doing this, to really be able to, you know, draw from both of our population centers and have something there for everybody at the Point that they can, you know, experience entertainment, gatherings, et cetera, with this venue. So again, we really appreciate all the work that's gone in from staff and Palmsville and obviously the TPP team, and are excited for the next steps. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions, obviously.
Thank you, Patrick and Robert. Does that conclude your presentation then?
Yes.
All right, let's go to the board for additional questions. I don't see any indication of further questions. I'd like to turn some time to our executive director, Michael, to give the board a little more context from the staff standpoint about this process that has led us up to this meeting. Michael, do you mind?
Thank you, Co-Chair Lowry. Yeah, thanks. We've been working hand in hand for the past 4 months at least, trying to understand the financing, the public benefit, and what this really does for this site. And it's been a lot of hard work from my staff, our consultants, myself, and I appreciate the partnership with TPP. It's been a long road, but as everybody can see from their presentation, they've put a lot of hard work, a lot of time, a lot of money into getting to where we are, with both understanding and putting together the PIDs, hiring an event manager, operator, and also hiring an architect to make sure that we can hit the ground running if this gets approved. I would highly recommend we move this proposal forward, and I believe our consultant, Steve Kellenberg, also agrees that he would like to move this forward for the betterment.
Absolutely.
Who was that? That was Steve. Steve, your name was brought up. Would you care commenting on how you perceive this proposal.
Thank you for the opportunity. As I've mentioned before when asked this question, I remind us that, a couple of years ago when we went through the selection process to find a master developer for the first phase, there were a lot of strengths of a number of the teams. One of the unique propositions that TPP brought forward at that time was a major entertainment venue. I think at that time, and when going through the selection process, we recognized that this was frosting, on the cake of a already very strong urban design plan and development proposition, and recognizing that the additional visitation that this would bring was really kind of an insurance policy, for the state on this this huge investment that we're making, that it would help ensure success for the retail and for the food and beverage operation, and also it would help achieve financing. And they didn't really talk a lot about that, but in order to, this helps the project get financing for, the fundamental components of the first phase, because everybody in the market also sees this as a bit of an insurance policy for success. From an urban design and planning standpoint, it's a great location. We've been working with them on that. We've spent hours and many meetings on the streets and traffic and turning pockets and parking and all the details that a project of this scale requires. I think we are comfortable that those issues have been successfully resolved. And there's the last little point I would make is that there's a challenge here on what is the first phase of this project. I mean, not the 100-acre first phase, but like the kind of phase 1A and 1B. And there's a challenge because you can only kind of build one, it's difficult to build a whole bunch of buildings at the same time, get them all leased, get them all financed. And one of the things that this does is it allows a more complete first phase and a first phase of the promenade to create a real place that actually has a significant gravitas in terms of retail and building program that would be much harder to achieve without this as a inducer of for development and so anyway, those are my comments. I think you can tell I'm bullish on this because again, this has been something that we've been hoping for since the selection and a process of a developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. All right, this matter is.
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me. April, did you have a comment?
It's actually me, Jenny.
Okay,
I just want to
Jenny.
compliment.
I
This has been an incredible amount of work, and I want to compliment all the participants, staff. This is clearly incredibly well thought out. I appreciate the economic analysis, the thoughtfulness, and just really the collaborative team, staff, consultants, board, all. It's quite exciting to have such a incredible launch project. So just thanks to all.
Thank you, Mayor, and apologize again for not recognizing you immediately. So, the matter, as I was saying, is on the agenda for action. This is the time when the chair would consider a motion with respect to this proposal.
Mr. Chair, Mayor Walker.
Mayor Walker.
I also appreciate the economic analysis and this seems to me to be sort of the thing that's going to kick this off. I mean, this is unique to this particular area. It does give something at the end of the promenade other than the things that will be there. It ties nicely into the trail, River to Range Trail, the opportunity when people come to this venue and they'll have an experience. They'll be able to hopefully shop a lot as they're waiting and as they leave the venues. But I think that this is something that we need in order to kick this thing off. And it seems that we've got it dialed to the right size. I do agree with Representative Tusher. maybe it could be a little bigger if, you know, but I guess we'll have to trust the analysis on what fits in this market. That the Tahoe Center that I had an opportunity to tour was unique, and it was it certainly it was really something that, you know, if we play something like that here, I think it's going to be a big deal for us, and it'll start us off. I obviously, you know, it's a different place, and it's going to take a little bit of time. This thing's going to be sitting virtually in the true high desert for a while with you know, not a lot around it, but so we'll have to hopefully see things. Maybe it'll really move forward with other items. But my motion would be to approve this application and move this forward for further development.
Thank you, Mayor Walker. Representative Tusher to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a substitute motion, and let me.
A substitute motion is in order. Go ahead.
Before I state that motion, let me just share again my sincere compliments to the group here that have put all this work into what we saw today. It was well thought out and well presented, and has answered a lot of the questions that we've had over the last few months. And so thank you for all the legwork that's gone into this. And I am supportive of the project and think this will be a great kickstart to be able to make the point a real success. As we heard from Patrick and the team in terms of all of the different documents that need to get executed, what I'm afraid of is there's some detail and work that needs to be done in just finalizing those final terms. And so what I would propose in my substitute motion is similar to Mayor Walker's motion of approving the project and approving in concept these forums subject to final negotiations, and if the board would permit, allowing the co-chairs and Michael to finalize those terms and execute the documents. At some point, we'll come back and present those to the board, but allow the co-chairs and the executive director to enter into that and finalize the details. And we did ask, I asked JC to put together a rough resolution that lays that out. And so I could present that if that's in order, Mr. Chair.
I think that's in order if we have copies. I want to make, just as a question, make sure that folks understand the motion. The motion would be to adopt the resolution that would allow the executive director, yourself, and myself to negotiate those details, approve those details, but also bring it back after we approve to this board for ratification. Is that your motion?
Yeah, so we would go ahead and execute those documents, but we would make sure that the board is well aware of that, and we'd come back and explain everything that we negotiated.
All right. That's a motion. Do we have
one question on that motion, Representative Tusher? So would you give the board one more opportunity to review the documents before you execute them? Is that what you mean? Or do you mean you'd execute the documents and then tell us about it?
My proposal is that we'd execute the documents, then come back and tell you about it, just to ensure that we're not, that we keep the time frame that the TPP is looking for, and that we don't delay in getting the bonds out. That being said, we'll do it almost simultaneously with the approval. So we'll come back and let everyone know what we decided, but not come back for a formal vote or change of those documents to the board.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, if it's in order, maybe I could share this resolution virtually.
Please.
Is that okay?
Please.
Let's see if
it'll take a minute, but I think it's important to make a record. So
okay. Maybe if it's helpful, if I could just read the resolution. Is that okay?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Since we don't have copies.
Great. So the resolution reads, Pointed Mountain State Land Authority Board Resolution approving the PID 1 event venue subcampus application for the Pointed Mountain State Land, approving the dedication of public funds to the development of the subcampus infrastructure, and approving the inclusion of the subcampus acreage in the Public Infrastructure District, Resolution 2025-01. Whereas consistent with Utah Code annotated 11-59-20210, The Point of the Mountain State Land Authority, the Land Authority, is authorized to enter into a development agreement for some or all of the Point of the Mountain State Land as defined in Utah Code 11-59-1026. Whereas November 27, 2023, on November 27, 2023, the Land Authority entered into a disposition and development agreement called the Phase 1 DDA with the Point Partners, TPP, for the development of the area defined as Phase 1 for the Point of the Mountain Land, or Phase 1. Whereas the Land Authority Development Proposal Review Process and Phase 1 DDA create a process by which the Land Authority may approve applications for the development of specific subcampuses and enter into agreements for the development of the same. Whereas on June 11, 2024, the Land Authority created Public Infrastructure Districts 1 through 9, PIDs. Whereas on February 26, 2025, TPP submitted a sub-campus application on behalf of the Public Infrastructure District 1, PID 1, for the development of an event venue district associated with the Phase 1 event venue sub-campus application. Whereas in the event venue sub-campus application, PID 1 seeks certain development rights for the development of an approximately 100,000 square foot, 4,000 to 5,000 seat event venue supporting infrastructure and gathering space. Whereas as part of the event venue subcampus application, PID 1 requests the pledge of public funds currently dedicated to the Land Authority. Whereas as part of the events venue subcampus application, the PID 1 seeks the annexation of approximately 4.47 acres into the existing area dedicated to the PID's existing district. Whereas Utah Code annotated 11-59-3013 provides for the board through resolution to delegate powers to authority staff and designate an authority officer or an employee to execute on behalf of the authority acts to lease, transfer, or otherwise dispose of land that is part of the Point of the Mountain State Land. Now, therefore, the board of the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority, by the authority vested to it by the laws of the state of Utah, does hereby resolve the following. 1, the Land Authority Board approves the event venue subcampus application subject to final negotiation of terms. 2, the Land Authority Board approves the dedication of certain public funds to PID 1 as necessary to implement the event venue subcampus and as otherwise needed, subject to the final negotiation of terms. 3, the Land Authority Board approves as necessary to implement the event venue subcampus and as otherwise needed for the furtherance of the development of the Point amendments to PID governing documents and boundaries of the existing public infrastructure district, subject to final negotiation of terms. 4, the Land Authority Board delegates the authority to negotiate the specific terms of event venue subcampus development agreement, capital pledge agreement, and PID governing document terms to Executive Director Michael Ombre and Board Co-Chairs Jordan Tusher and V. Lowry Snow. And 5, the Land Authority Board delegates the authority to Executive Director Michael Ombre for signature the disposition and development agreement for the event venue subcampus of the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority between the authority and the PID 1 in the form negotiated by Director Ambre and the co-chairs with approvals from the co-chairs. In witness whereof, I certify the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority Board did approve and pass this resolution on this 18th day of March 2024. And then it would have the co-chair signatures. So again, my motion, just to restate it here, Mr. Chair, is for the board to approve this resolution number 2025-01.
Thank you, Representative. Let's see if we can get a second, and then we will open it up for discussion. Do I have a second to that motion, that substitute motion?
I would.
Senator Stevenson has supplied a second. Discussion now to the motion that is before us from the board. Any discussion or questions on the motion? Not Kimberly, no one indicating there? Okay. Excuse me?
Just typo. I think it might be 7-4 from memory as opposed to.
All right, thanks for that correction, Robert. So not seeing any indication for further questions or comments, I will place that substitute motion for a vote. All in favor of the motion approving the resolution that has been read into the record by the maker of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed to that motion? Not hearing any opposed, I'll rule that the motion passes unanimously and the resolution is duly approved. Thank you. Thank you, members, and thank you again to the IPP partners and folks that are here for your presentation. It has been a long time, a lot of work, and I agree with all the statements that have been made about the amount of work and preparation that's been done, the studies, all leading us up to this moment. And I think for this board, bringing us to a point that we feel really comfortable and supportive of this going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Want to thank staff too for all of your work, our executive director, Nick and Don, for your support as well. So with that, the next item on the agenda is to move into executive session in parentheses if needed. And I'm going to indicate in consulting with the co-chair that we don't think that that's needed. Mr. Director, you agree with me. So the last item on the agenda is that last item that, oh, yes, thanks for that reminder. Before we adjourn, just a matter of administrative book or housekeeping, so to speak. The chairs would like to know whether or not, given the reduced number of our board, is there a better time that meets your schedule for our meeting? We're very open to that discussion here, and we can have it later as well. But do you like the present schedule, or do you have a preference otherwise? Let's go to Mayor Ramsey. Weigh in.
My preference would just be to have it be a dedicated time always, and that's when it's going to be. It's hard when it changes. I think having less flexibility in when it is and just having it be firm when it is probably helpful for all of us. We can't control the weather, the distance. Most of us are traveling far to get here. We can't control that, but I think my preference would just be if we could find a time that seemed to work for everyone and everyone said, yep, that could be when it is, and we just set that time, that'd be helpful.
Thank you. Senator Stevenson.
My only problem was I had a little problem this morning controlling 9 and 9:30. So other than that, I'm okay.
Yeah, same.
All right. Any other board members? Representative Tusher. Wait just a second, Representative. Was that Troy? Were you going to speak?
Yeah, I just want to say, is it possible to make it a 10 o'clock meeting as opposed to 9? At whatever day we pick. So I can live with either, but that was my 2 cents.
Thanks, Mayor Walker. I think we should have them in St. George. It's just a preference of mine. But
I'd be happy to second that.
all right.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, Representative
It
Tusher.
sounds like we're headed
Yeah,
south.
I'll say Tuesdays have become quite difficult for me. So if we could find another day, preferably a Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
A
that would be
Wednesday
better.
morning would be my first choice.
If we could do a Wednesday at 10.
Wednesday at 10 would be
would be great for me.
So
I like that.
Yeah, it's actually better for me. I can make this slot work, but Tuesday's our council meeting, so moving off of Tuesday would be my preference.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson.
Lowry?
Just a second. Senator Stevenson has a follow-up.
Since the alcohol bill of last session, I have Sundays off, so we could hold it Sunday.
Okay.
I want to hear that backstory. Give me a call, please.
It's just a
must have got a lot
recent
of
pronouncement
time
that
back,
came out, I think, so.
I think I'm with you on that one, Jerry.
So
All
we're
right.
saying in St. George on Wednesdays at 10, is that what we're saying?
Yeah, that's right. I'll tell you what, if it's okay with everyone, why don't we ask our executive director to maybe set up a little poll, maybe 2 or 3 different proposals?
Sure, we can do that. I kind of heard overwhelmingly that.
So who objects to Wednesday at 10? Anyone?
That work for you?
That, I can make that work, yep. So then I think that we've got that. And so I suggest we have our first one tomorrow morning.
What week of
Except
the
for
month?
tomorrow, it's
third.
not.
So yes, what week of the month works best for you
We
all?
have been doing the 3rd, is that? When is interim? Is that the
That would
3rd?
be my question. That's probably what we need to work
We
on.
just need to make sure it's not the same week as interim.
So is there a strong preference either way as between second or third? Because I think Representative Tusher brings up a good point, and that is, and shortly they'll move into doing interim. And if you could let us know on that.
Whichever one it is in interim, I'll find
Right,
out.
okay,
They may
all right.
not have, I don't think they actually finalize that until April, but if we could just plan on, if interim's the second week, we'll do it the 3rd. If interim's the 3rd week, we'll do it the 2nd.
Okay. And I, of course, remind the board that we still, you can still attend virtually if need be. We certainly like to have you here, but that's acceptable as well. So Cece, we'll make that decision and get the word to you, and you can send out some calendar invites so we can get that on our calendars. Thank you. Thank you all again. Let me just take a moment to guess a little bit of a privilege. This I think is the most important project the state has going right now. And I know the state has a lot of things that it is invested in and has an interest in. When this started, we said it was a generational project. It is. And it's taken us a long time to get here, but the planning has been absolutely appropriate for something of this size. So thank you for your time, your dedication, members of the board. And thank you for the new, I shouldn't say new members, but the reappointment for willing to serve. And with that, we'll accept the final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mayor Ramsey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Representative Tusher. Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 We
Aye.
stand adjourned. Thank you. Bye.